and welcome to the Dynamic Duel Podcast, a weekly show where we review superhero films and debate the superiority between Marvel and DC by comparing their characters in stat-based battle simulations. I'm Johnny DC.
And I'm his twin brother, Marvelous Joe.
And in this episode, we are reviewing Wonder Woman 1984. Finally, holy cow. It debuted on HBO Max and premiered in theaters this past Friday on Christmas Day. So however you saw it, I hope you saw it. We will be talking about that later on, and I'm pretty pumped. Been waiting forever to see this film, and there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, it's quite controversial, I think, amongst the fans. I think there's a lot of people that really like this movie, and quite a few people that didn't like it. So you can find out where each of us landed on the movie later on. Before that, we're going to break down the comic book movie news from the past week, of which there was really only one thing to talk about. You know, not surprising considering the holidays, but Marvel released a new WandaVision trailer, so we'll be talking about that. As always, we list our segment times in our episode description, so feel free to check out the show notes if you want to skip ahead to a particular topic. And we want to remind you guys that we currently have a fundraiser going on right now where this podcast is raising money for the Pop Culture Classroom nonprofit organization, which promotes literacy and education through pop culture programs for underserved youths. It's a fantastic program. Last year, we were able to donate about $100 to them. This year, we're trying to beat that, but we're not asking for your direct monetary contributions to our Facebook fundraiser. Instead, we're asking you guys to please rate this podcast on podchaser.com, and for each rating that we receive, we will be donating $1 to the organization. Yeah, last week we had 24 ratings, and this week we have a grand total of 29. So we have a long way to go to get over 100, which again, we're hoping to do before the end of this year. So please, if you're listening right now and you haven't given us a rating on podchaser.com, please do so now. It goes to a great cause. And for your help, Joseph and I are giving away free digital fan art of Keelix and Herbie from our Christmas charity duel a few episodes back, drawn by artist Matt Turner. We'll be providing access to that artwork at the beginning of the new year, but please make sure you take advantage of this and please help us out. Think of the children.
Exactly.
Don't be a dick.
Jeez.
Help the needy kids. But with that out of the way,
quick to the no prize.
A no prize is an award Marvel used to give out up until the 90s to fans. Our version, the Dynamic Duel No Prize, is a digital award we post on social media that we personally draw for those who we feel gave the best answer to our question of the week. Last week's question was all about how you plan on watching Wonder Woman 1984, either at home on HBO Max or in a movie theater, and why. We got a few answers for this one, mainly because Jonathan forgot to post the question to Facebook.
Okay,
but again, guys,
blame me again.
You don't have to wait for him to do that. You can literally answer the question as soon as you hear it and reach out to us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or email.
Yeah, don't wait for me. I'm only human. I fuck up.
So let's run down our honorable mentions and the no prize winner. Our first honorable mention goes to Taylor Glad, who said that he will be seeing Wonder Woman 1984 on opening day in theaters because it'll be more of a fun experience than just seeing it at home. Now, I watched the movie on my laptop, and I gotta say, it was nowhere near the theatrical experience. So for everyone that was able to, that felt like they were in a safe enough position to go to the theater and watch the film on the big screen, I know you definitely had a better experience than I did.
Yeah, anyone who saw this in a movie theater, please reach out to us and let us know what your experience was like. I'm really curious as to what the general audience response to the film was. Our next honorable mention goes to Al Gustafson, who said that he will unfortunately not be viewing Wonder Woman 1984 because he lives in Denmark and they don't have HBO Max and all of the cinemas are closed due to COVID, which is really sad and just goes to show that we are definitely still in the midst of this pandemic.
Yeah, I think the international audiences really kind of got screwed with this whole HBO Max deal. But here's hoping that you guys get to see the film sooner rather than later.
Al did mention that instead of watching the film, he will be spending time with his family during the holidays, so, that's great to hear.
I bet you Christmas in Denmark is dope. The final honorable mention goes to Miggy Madangian, who said that he's going to watch the movie on HBO Max with the fam because he doesn't have any friends to watch it with in the theaters. He recently made a move, so he doesn't have any of his friends around him, and he mentioned that it is way cheaper to not go to the theater.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I have a wife and 2 daughters, so going to the movies, I'm easily going to spend upwards of $50. So I actually really loved seeing it at home.
And Miggy, if you don't have any friends, we will be your friends.
I'm Miggy's friend. He's a DC fan. We're all friends.
Oh, he's a DC fan? Forget it.
Yeah.
Forget it.
Oh, dang. Forget Joseph Miggy.
Before we name the No Prize winner, we'd like to go ahead and reach out to all the people that participated in the question of the week, including Mincemeat Mouse, Katie Caldwell, Shane Habazine, Richard McGrew, Kevin Odilon, and Matthew Gonzalez. Thank you guys so much for your answers and for engaging with us. We truly appreciate it.
But the winner of this week's No Prize is Nick Abanto, who said that his buddy bought a projector, so he's going over his house to watch it. It'll be just like a theater, but better, because the snacks are going to be way cheaper, and they won't be surrounded by people. That sounds like the best way to watch the movie, and it really makes me want to go out and just buy a projector.
Yeah, if I had a projector, I would never go to the theater. If I had like a really nice like home theater setup, because that's like the best of both worlds, right? You get the theater experience without all the bullshit.
Yeah, totally. Hashtag goals. But congrats once again to Nick Abanto. You win this week's No Prize. If you, the listener, want a shot at winning your own No Prize, stay tuned to later on in this episode when we'll be asking another question of the week.
And now that that's done,
on to the news.
All right, this past week we got a kind of unnecessary new trailer for WandaVision. It's just right on the heels of Disney's investor meeting trailer that we got for the show just a few weeks ago. So I'm not quite sure why they released this 1-minute preview of the show now as opposed to closer to the show's release date on January 15th. A lot of what they show in this preview is recycled footage from what we've seen before, but there are a few things that stood out to me that I kind of want to talk about. We learned that the couple moves to Westview, which is this idyllic town. They go there right after getting married and to start a family. As we already know, they're kind of going through the decades through iconic television shows from the past as they live their life. And Wanda gets pregnant and they have twin babies and stuff gets all weird and shit.
It just gives me like this weird, like, I don't know, like David Lynch vibe almost or something like that.
Yeah, it looks like a David Lynch show, kind of.
Yeah.
The part with Aunt Agnes, aka Agatha Harkness, I think within this trailer, they revealed that it is her that is behind this entire reality. The fact that she says let's take it from the top, as if they are filming some kind of television show, is fourth wall breaking and shows that she realizes that they are living out a sitcom, essentially. And Wanda and Vision are both really confused by what she's saying, kind of amused. But, you know, she does another take. So she is definitely the one that is not necessarily creating this reality, but she's the one that's manipulating Wanda into doing so. I don't know if they tipped their hands too much through that reveal or if that's a spoiler or anything like that. It could be that they're all just messing with us and that's not actually the case, but this preview seemed to heavily imply that she's the one behind all of this. The other really strange thing that happened in this trailer is that in the Disney investor preview, we saw Wanda looking at the Mind Stone. However, in this preview, it looks like she's looking at the Space Stone because it's blue. And then it turns yellow at one point in a flash. So I'm not necessarily sure that we're looking at an Infinity Stone or if it's something entirely different or if the show actually deals with multiple Infinity Stones. I have no idea. Now, last we heard the series was going to be 6 episodes, and before that we heard it was going to be 9 episodes for Murphy's Multiverse. But according to an official Disney source, it turns out that the show is going to run from January 15th until March 5th. Putting the show officially at 8 episodes.
Oh, wow.
So it's going to be a little bit longer than your standard Disney series, which was stated to be 6 episodes apiece. The Disney announcement also referred to the 8 episodes as Season 1. So it's possible that we're actually going to get another season of WandaVision, which would be interesting, especially if we don't see much of them in the upcoming Marvel films. I did see the first bit of marketing from this preview that I didn't really like, because everything else has been amazing. But there was a part where Vision says, "Wanda, have you gotten bigger?" because she's pregnant. And she like turns around and she knocks over some fruit. And he moves like Superman, like the Flash, like in a blur to catch the fruit from falling onto the ground. And while Vision does move faster than your standard human, it's never been part of his power set to move in a blur like Superman. I thought that was really bizarre.
Maybe it's just like a glitch or something, like he glitches, like a glitch in their reality.
I mean, maybe.
Probably not.
But the fact that he was surprised that Wanda was pregnant makes me wonder exactly how the conception happens. Like, Vision knows about the birds and the bees, right?
Heck no. He's an android.
Well, however it happened, whether it be like in the comics through magic, or maybe we'll get like a kinky Wanda and Vision love scene in this show. It'll be interesting to see how this pregnancy happens. And that brings us to our question of the week. Guys, in the Disney Plus show, where do Wanda's and Vision's babies come from?
Oh boy.
Can't wait to hear these answers. Post your answer to our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or email us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com. We'll pick our favorite answer and draw that person a Dynamic Duel No Prize that we'll post to social media. Be sure to answer before January 3rd because that's when we record the next episode.
Well, I think that does it for the news from this week. Now let's get into the main event of this episode, in which we review the film Wonder Woman 1984. Okay, so Wonder Woman 1984 was directed by Patty Jenkins, the director from the first Wonder Woman film that came out in 2017. Heads up, this will be a spoiler review, so if you haven't seen it yet, it will be available on HBO Max for no additional cost until January 24th, 2021, so check it out there if you're unable to get to a movie theater during the pandemic. The film has proven to be pretty divisive, unfortunately, so if you don't have access to HBO Max and aren't a big fan of the character, I would recommend maybe waiting to see the film. But for those of us in the US, I absolutely recommend getting HBO Max, not just for Wonder Woman 1984, but that is a big perk. Now, I've seen the film twice now, and I liked it both times I saw it. Both me and my family did. So I was pretty surprised to see the negative reactions to the film online.
Yeah, I would say like is a strong word for how I feel about the film.
Really?
Yeah.
Part of me thinks that the negative reaction is like a Disney conspiracy, but part of me also understands the problems everyone is having with it and why the film is so divisive. It shouldn't be divisive, but I understand why it is. Now, if you've listened to our Wonder Woman vs. Thor duel episode, you may remember in my backstory for Wonder Woman that I explained there are really two versions of the character, one that stems from Greek mythology, and one more rooted in the original feminist vision of Wonder Woman's creator, Dr. William Moulton Marston. In that episode, I explained that Dr. Marston's intention for Wonder Woman was always for her to be an alternative hero, one that didn't always solve her problems with fists, but was a passive ambassador for peace who only resorted to combat as a last resort. The other version of Wonder Woman is a brave and strong Amazon warrior/demigod who's just as likely to slay mythical monsters as she is evil men, like Maxwell Lord. The version based in mythology was the one we saw more of in the first film, where she battled with her sword and shield. We didn't see those weapons in this new film, because she took after the more pacifist version of the character. Now, I personally prefer the mythical version of the character, probably because I just love Greek mythology in general, but I understand the appeal of the pacifist version, and frankly, I'm glad it exists, because the world needs a hero and an example like that to look up to. And what are DC's heroes if not aspirational? And that's ultimately how I feel about this film. I would have preferred something more action-packed, more like Clash of the Titans, but I'm glad this film exists, especially during these times, because while we are all fighting amongst each other over how we wish the world could be, sometimes it's best to just take a step back and appreciate the beauty that is there. And this film is beautiful in more ways than one. The cinematography is breathtaking, whether you're watching Themyscira or The White House. Patty Jenkins definitely brought her A game as a filmmaker to manifest her vision of this world. Some scenes were Aquaman level beautiful, but Patty also brought an emotional resonance to the film as one of its writers in a way that affected me more than I thought it would. It might be because I watched the film with a bunch of women, and I was just affected by the number of times they cried during the film, but I also cried, like, in a good way though. I can't remember the last time a superhero film made me do that. Now, even though I liked the film, I will absolutely admit that the script is far from perfect. In fact, I'd say other than the emotional hooks of the story, it fails on almost every other level. We don't really get a sense for the conflict or the stakes until pretty late in the film. The film sets up rules that it doesn't follow, it sets up arcs it doesn't complete. It's just a huge mess.
Yeah, I do think that the film was technically well made. I have no issue with that. I think the performances were great and everything, but the second half of the movie largely boils down to Wonder Woman chasing down Maxwell Lord, who's running around the globe giving out wishes. And there's very little more to the story than that, and I feel like that it's not enough to justify its 2.5-hour runtime.
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah, this movie was way too long. It should have been much shorter for how little story there is. Now, the first Wonder Woman film was written by Alan Heinberg alongside Jason Fuchs and Zack Snyder, the latter of whom, of course, introduced Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman in the 2016 film Batman v Superman. I loved the first Wonder Woman film. It was a near perfect film, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's great.
This film, Wonder Woman 1984, was written by Patty Jenkins herself, along with Jeff Johns, who's proven to be quite the controversial figure of late. Patty Jenkins is a fantastic director who truly seems to love the character of Wonder Woman, though after seeing this movie, I think it's pretty clear that she's a bigger fan of the 70s television series than the character from the comics, in my opinion.
Does she have any other writing credits to her name that you know of?
Yeah, she was actually a writer before she was a director.
Oh, okay.
She wrote the movie Monster, the one that she won the Oscar for.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so she does have writing experience, which kind of surprises me because structurally, the film is kind of off.
The film's other writer, Jeff Johns, who is absolutely a fan of the comics and one of DC Comics' best writers, for some reason, seems to be poison to every DC film he's heavily involved with, all the way back to Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern film. His creative choices might work on paper, but they fall apart in the world of live-action cinema. Considering some of the best DC films haven't had his involvement, and most of the more recent bad DC films have, I think it's time to say goodbye to Jeff Johns from the world of film.
I would agree with that. Yeah. I used to really root for the guy, but, fool me thrice, shame on me.
Exactly. I think genre is one of the biggest problems that this film has. Like, it's not fully an action film. There's very little action. I think they try to make it like a romance film as well, but it's not much of that. It's not really much of anything.
Although I do have to say that while the story was all over the place, the best thing that could be said about this film is that the story itself is more of a personal one, and I do appreciate that. Because even though we're dealing with worldwide stakes this time around, the film's main conflict was the emotional stakes regarding the wishes that Diana, Barbara, and Maxwell Lord made.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It reminds me of this one quote from Joss Whedon in an interview that I read with him. They were asking him how he was possibly going to top the first Avengers film for the sequel. And he said, by making the stakes more personal. It wasn't so much about what was going to happen to the world, but to the hero themselves. And in this film, you absolutely get a sense of what each of these characters is feeling. Speaking of characters, let's talk about them. Let's get into the character breakdown. Now, Wonder Woman / Diana Prince was played by Gal Gadot. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Gal Gadot is Wonder Woman. In the role, she's exotic, she's elegant, she's fierce, but with a compassionate side, she's perfect. She's come a long way as an actress, I think, and for a film with such high emotionality, she totally nailed the emotional beats. Whether she was lonely, or heartbroken, or afraid, or in love, you definitely got a sense of what she was feeling.
Also, she's fine. She's fine as hell. She looks really good in this movie.
As always. Her arc in this film revolved around truth. In the opening scene of the film, on Themyscira, young Diana learns from her aunt Antiope that truth is all there is, and that no true hero is born from lies. In the year 1984, Diana's greatest desire is to have Steve Trevor back, since the character died in the first film. And he comes back to her in this film, but it's not real. It's not truly him. And she ultimately has to realize and accept the truth that Steve is dead, and she can't have him back. Once she does that and her arc culminates, it's like there's this weight that's lifted from her, like the truth sets her free. And she learns that she can fly on her own in this really great, majestic, emotional scene. And she gets her full strength back as well, which allows her to be the hero she's meant to be and finally take on the villains. Her arc really had nothing to do with her goal in this film, which was really just to find out what the heck was going on with the Dreamstone. It was kind of a passive goal. Maxwell Lord really had the agency in this film, and she was just chasing him around, either to his office or Egypt, or the White House, or the super satellite. It doesn't make for the most interesting of heroes when all they're doing is chasing the bad guy around. It's the sign of a weak hero.
Yeah. And not only that, you think she would have done a better job of chasing him around, considering she's fucking Wonder Woman and he's just a dude, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, you can rationalize that by saying that she's losing her abilities through the course of the film. But you're right. She's always like 2 steps behind a villain that really has no ability to stop her. So it's kind of weird.
Yeah, and they kind of showed that in the White House when Barbara had to come to his aid, right?
Yeah. Do you think the scene where she renounced her wish was more emotional than the moment she saw Steve die in the first film, or less?
Ooh, I think it was more emotional in this film. That's saying a lot because that was super sad and super emotional, but I think even more so in this film.
Do you think like 60 plus years is too long to grieve for someone?
Absolutely. And I think Steve basically told her that. He was like, that's crazy. There's other guys, better guys than him. Guys like me.
You weren't born in 1984, so I don't think that works, man.
2 years. 2 years too late. Dink it. I do want to touch on her costumes. She wears her golden armor in the final fight for this film. We saw a lot of the armor in the posters for the movie, so I pretty much knew it was going to look cool, like as cool as her standard outfit, which is basically perfect. I just wish there was more of the golden armor in this film. But then again, I wish there was more action in general.
Yeah, I did think it showed how powerful Cheetah was in that she was able to pretty much destroy that armor. I still don't know what the purpose of the armor was. Yes, it was to protect herself against a more powerful cheetah. That being said, she didn't know Barbara had turned herself into the cheetah by that point.
Exactly.
So you think that she would have come into the battle restored to her full abilities, assuming that she would be able to handle herself, considering she was at less than full strength when she first encountered Barbara at the White House.
I find it so weird that they would save her battle armor from the comics for a film with such little battling, you know? Like, save that shit for when she goes up against a giant Cyclops or like Cerberus or something cool. Don't use it in a film where you're trying to push, you know, like a more passive Wonder Woman on us. And also don't use a villain like Maxwell Lord, whose biggest claim to fame in the comics was how Wonder Woman brutally murdered him. You know, there are plenty of non-physically threatening Wonder Woman villains like Veronica Cale or Dr. Psycho that they could have used instead.
Absolutely. It just seems like they introduced the armor for marketing and to sell toys.
Basically. Yeah, absolutely. It's another toy. Hands down. And I would totally buy the shit out of that toy, by the way. Moving on to Steve Trevor. Chris Pine's performance as Steve Trevor was an integral part of the first film's success, I feel. And while he wasn't as integral in this film, he did bring a lot to it, and he was probably my favorite character in the film. It was kind of a reversal from the first film because Diana was a fish out of water in that one, but in 1984, Steve is. The technology of the 80s is old to us by now, but it was cool to see how someone who died in the 1910s would be amazed by it. All in all, though, I don't think they needed to bring him back the way that they did. They didn't need to bring him back in someone else's body. I mean, it gets kind of awkward the more you think about it.
Yeah, especially considering that she boned another dude without that dude's consent, right?
Yeah, she just imagined that it was Steve, though, so it's okay.
Exactly. No, it's not okay. And then she like meets up with him later at the end of the movie. Like, you think that she'd feel kind of like awkward considering what she did with that guy. But no, she just kind of like writes it off. There are ethical implications here that the movie never addresses that I totally think that Wonder Woman would think about in the course of the story. You know, what if she never renounced her wish? Like, Steve would spend the rest of his days out living in this other dude's body. What would happen to that guy? You know, she was totally fine with just like taking over someone else's life.
Yeah, it was kind of messed up. I'm not going to lie. It was super weird. They pulled like a Superman 2 where like they did the hibbity dibbity, but the other person doesn't remember it. That said, I would like to put out there that we don't know they did that.
Oh, they totally porked. They did.
Jeez. Don't talk about Wonder Woman that way.
But what's interesting is that the movie didn't have to handle Steve's resurrection like that.
Yeah.
You know, they're dealing with magic.
Exactly.
They could have had him just come back from the dead.
Exactly.
They didn't have to put him in another dude's body.
I guess they based his comeback on the film Heaven Can Wait, which was like a pretty popular film starring Warren Beatty. But like, why? Like, I mean, that movie didn't even come out in the 80s. Which reminds me, the whole time I was watching this film, I was just waiting for some kind of tie to 1984, like the book. Or some reason why the story had to be set in the 80s. And honestly, I have no idea why.
It could have happened in modern times, and it would have been pretty much the same exact film. The fashion would have been different, sure, but it's not like that's integral to the story.
Right, exactly, yeah, no. I want to know what it is with DC and their movie titles lately. Like Birds of Prey should have been called Harley Quinn. And this film should have just been named like Wonder Woman 2. If it were up to me, the film would have actually, like you said, been set during modern times with Hades as the villain, and Diana would have had to travel to the underworld to retrieve Steve Trevor. Wonder Woman Underworld. Now that's a title.
With vampires and werewolves.
Exactly. Why not? It's magic. Now, Steve Trevor really didn't have an arc other than experiencing the future and helping Diana realize that she had to let him go. It was a very emotional scene when Steve explained to Diana that she had to renounce her wish for him. It got to me, I'm not going to lie. The way he was like, you don't have to say goodbye because I'm already gone. And then how he called out to her saying he'd love her no matter where he was.
Oh God, it was pretty sad. I think a lot of that had to do with Gal Gadot's great acting in that scene, though. The heartbreak was palpable.
Oh yeah, when she was like, I'll never love anyone else ever again. I was like, oh, no. Now, Steve Trevor also served as comic relief, though. But not all of the jokes landed as well as they thought they would have from the trailers. Like the whole wardrobe changing scene was just poorly edited.
Yeah, why was it in here?
I have no idea. Served no purpose. It wasn't even funny. His funniest scene, I thought, was when they were stealing the jet from the Smithsonian and Diana forgot to tell him about radar. And he was like, well, shit, Diana.
That delivery was great. I laughed.
I both loved and hated that scene. Like, it seemed really out of character for Wonder Woman to steal a jet. And also, like, why would the Smithsonian jets be on a runway with enough fuel to travel to the other side of the planet? It made no damn sense.
No sense whatsoever. What did you think about Wonder Woman suddenly having the power to turn things invisible?
I mean, I actually did think it was really cool to see like that display of that new power. And it's not from the comics, but I thought it made sense within the world that the DCEU had established. It came out of nowhere, and I didn't even mind ultimately because that fireworks scene was fucking magical. And just to have the invisible jet, you know, this iconic vehicle from the Wonder Woman mythos in the film was, I'm not going to lie, pretty awesome to see.
And of course, the jet becomes obsolete once Wonder Woman gains the ability to fly.
Yeah. I actually thought that the whole turning things invisible power was going to come to play later on in the film, but it didn't.
I'm sure that there have been plenty of other instances in which that ability could have come in handy in her adventures.
Who the hell is writing this? Come on, Patty. Moving on to Maxwell Lord, he was played by Pedro Pascal. I've been a fan of Pedro Pascal ever since he was on Game of Thrones, so I was really glad when I first heard that he was cast. It surprised me that he was cast as Maxwell Lord, since the character isn't traditionally a Wonder Woman villain, but I figured Pedro Pascal would do great in the role. And in terms of his performance, he did do great. It's not often that you can get choked up over the villain just as much as you do for the hero, which I definitely did. But performance aside, the character had some problems. Max's arc revolved around pride and excess. He was willing to do whatever was necessary to achieve his dreams, though it's not entirely clear what those dreams were. Like, he wanted wealth and power, but to what end? We have no idea. Like, once he had his hands on a majority of the world's oil, why didn't he just stop? Like, why did he keep going? Why didn't he just rejuvenate his health and call it a day?
That was the largest issue that I had with the character. It seems like he had no endpoint. And he does state specifically within the film that he just wants more and more and more, but it didn't seem in keeping with common sense because he knew that he was also destroying the world in the process. It just didn't make sense.
Not at all. Which, by the way, holy shit, they used the Dreamstone in this film. I thought I had read earlier that it was the Philosopher's Stone from the comics, but no, they went with the Dreamstone. The Dreamstone is a creation of Dream of the Endless, Sandman. It's one of his symbols of power, and it was used by Dr. Destiny in the comics to see into people's dreams and reshape reality. The Philosopher's Stone was what Lex Luthor named an artifact that's actually named the Warlegog, and it's this fourth-dimensional map of the universe that its wielder can use to alter time, space, and reality. Maxwell Lord has never used the Dreamstone in the comics, and I figured that they would have saved that for the Sandman show they're developing for Netflix, since it's a pretty crucial MacGuffin to the first Sandman book. Now when people watch that, they're going to be like, wait, the thing from Wonder Woman?
And nobody's going to care.
I will. I'll care.
It's all a big multiverse, remember? Nothing's connected.
That's true. Now, making Max the Dreamstone was such an interesting decision. Like, typically in the comics, he's a low-level telepath, but I don't hate the change that they made here. Like, it was pretty vile in the way he manipulated others into making wishes on his behalf, and then, like, would take from them anyway.
I thought it was hilarious, all the different ways he would try to get people to say, I wish something, something, you know? Like, how many different times does the word wish show up in this movie?
Way too many times.
He was like, don't you want this? Say I wish this. Like, I got tired of hearing it after a while.
Yeah.
Don't you wish this for me? Yes. It's so stupid.
It's like, maybe? I'll take it. It took a while to understand the rules of the Dreamstone and its power. I didn't catch on that it had a monkey paw effect until later. Pretty much until they explained that it had a monkey paw effect.
I wish they would have established that earlier, especially in regards to the Wonder Woman action scene where she was taking on the caravan in the desert. Because when I was watching that, I just thought that Wonder Woman sucked. It's like, dude, she is not handling herself well against a bunch of dudes that she should be wiping the floor with. And it wasn't until after that scene that we actually learned that she's losing her powers. Now, if they would have set that up before the scene, we would have gone in being concerned for her, understanding what was going on, knowing the stakes of what she was going up against as a slightly depowered individual. But no.
And I think they tried to set that up when she had trouble breaking the lock that went into Maxwell Lord's garage, but it wasn't good enough. Like, I was also confused during that caravan battle scene. Because like when she was like getting shot and bleeding, I was like, oh, I didn't realize the DCE Wonder Woman was not bulletproof. What the heck? But no, it just turned out that, you know, she was weakening.
And like she like let go of the rope and everything when she was saving those kids. And by the way, that was the fakest shit ever. When she was like rolling over the kids as she was falling onto the street. Like those kids would be fucking dead.
Those kids landed on their head.
Yes.
That was bad.
Yeah, it was really bad.
Really weird that they let that be in the film. You think editing would have been a good fix for that, but they just wanted to show us how fake it was, I guess.
Yeah.
In terms of the Dreamstone, I'm also not entirely sure if it was capable of granting multiple wishes. Like, Cheetah got 2 wishes, but that may have just been because she had 1 wish with the stone and 1 wish with Max. Like, Max's son, Alistair, may have had multiple wishes too, but I'm really unclear as to what happened with his first wish about wanting his father's greatness.
Yeah, nothing came of that. I thought that meant that the kid was going to have his father's powers and that he was going to end up saving the day, but nothing like that ever happened. It was so weird.
Super weird. It's almost like they accidentally left that in the film.
Yeah.
Like that was from like a previous draft where he does save the day or something like that. Mm-hmm. Bizarre. It was Alistair's relationship with his father, Max, that really made you feel something for Max, though. You know, having someone call you a loser in front of your child is probably really shitty. And you understand from seeing Max's relationship with his own father why Max would want his son to love and be proud of him. That said, the whole child relationship thing is also pretty manipulative. Like, it's a well-known trick in screenwriting that if you want someone to be likable, like even a villain, you give them a good relationship with a kid or a dog.
And I thought it was totally unnecessary. Like, every time the kid came up, I was like, move it along. Just move on. Like, I already know this is unnecessary. It added nothing to Max's motivation either.
Other than to manipulate the audience.
Right, exactly.
Even though Max apologized to his son at the end, I'm still hoping he was punished for his crimes in some way, you know, in the end of the film. Like prison, maybe? We never learn what happens to him, and that's such a bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, I thought that by the end of the film, we would have learned that, like, he was being manipulated by some evil mythical god, maybe Katarga. But nope, it was Dechalafrea Arrow, aka Dolos, the Duke of Deception. Now, the Duke of Deception is a Wonder Woman villain. He's the god of lies, a minor deity who served under Ares, who we never see at the end of the movie. Katarga would have been perfect, since he, like, you know, as you know from our last episode, he was the evil god responsible for Barbara's transformation into the cheetah. Moving on to Cheetah / Barbara Ann Minerva, played by Kristen Wiig. Like Steve Trevor, Barbara Ann Minerva provided the film's comic relief, at least up until she beat the crap out of that one guy who assaulted her. I've heard some say that Kristen Wiig was miscast in the role. I don't think I would go that far. I do think she gave a good performance, and I think she has a really solid acting range, actually.
Yeah, I was impressed.
She could play everything from cute and ditzy to fierce and formidable. I just think her character ended up not really being necessary in this film, unfortunately. Like, Cheetah's arc in this film revolved around envy and greed, which is good because it's the character's same arc in the comics, where she's Wonder Woman's main antagonist, next to probably Ares and Circe. I was surprised that she ended up playing second fiddle to Maxwell Lord, honestly. Like, she just ended up being his muscle, really, you know, someone for Wonder Woman to fight with in the end.
I think that the character worked the best at the beginning of the film when she was more of comic relief, because that really played to Kristen Wiig's strengths.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think that she did a horrible job playing the evil bad guy, but once that started happening, I kind of lost interest in the character.
Yeah, she became like really one note and not really sympathetic or relatable anymore.
Right, exactly. And the whole idea that she was becoming evil because the stone was like taking away her compassion and kindness seemed like a cop-out in itself.
Oh yeah, totally.
It takes away the character's arc essentially when the bad guy is artificially evil.
Yeah, that's the worst. I can't stress again how much I wish like Targa was the main villain with Cheetah as his avatar. That final fight should have been so much bigger. Like all of that wishing power built up to nothing. It should have summoned Targa, who like possessed Cheetah, and that should have been what transformed her into her final Cheetah form or something.
Yeah, and that would ultimately explain why she became a cheetah in the first place. Because like, why did that happen? She said she wanted to be an apex predator, but that could be so many different things. And I don't get why she wanted to be an apex predator to begin with. Like, she was already pretty damn strong. She kicked the shit out of Wonder Woman already.
Right. Isn't beating Wonder Woman, like, doesn't that officially make you the apex predator?
Yes, exactly.
And in terms of her becoming a cheetah, like, I feel like the film rationalized it because she was wearing cheetah print clothing at the time, which is super, super dumb. Though maybe I would have accepted it if we actually saw her transform, but we didn't even get to see that.
Yeah, that would have been cool to see, I think.
If they do make a sequel to this, and they are, I do hope in the third film that Cheetah finds a way to get her fur and sharp claws back. Only next time, you know, she'll actually look good and not overly CGI like she was in this film.
She did not look good. I think that the auburn hair is essential to the look of the character, because without the darker hair, she looks like an elderly cheetah woman.
Yeah, it was kind of like embarrassingly bad. I'm not gonna lie. And it didn't look like Kristen Wiig, too. If they would have just made it look like Kristen Wiig, it would have been fine. But they changed her face so that she wasn't like even recognizable as Kristen Wiig. Right. It was like in the nose, and you're right, the hair and the lines. It was just not good. I didn't recognize Cheetah as Kristen Wiig until Diana pulled her out of the water. But by then it was too late. The action was done.
Yeah.
There's not too much more to say about the characters. Those really were the four main characters of the film. Everyone else was just kind of, like had a really small minor role. And we'll touch on a few of them in our plot breakdown. So the film starts off in Themyscira with present-day Diana narrating how sometimes you don't realize what lesson you're learning until you've realized you've learned it, or something like that. Young Diana learns a lesson from Antiope about cheating after partaking in Amazonian Olympic-type games. Now that I think about it, maybe the whole moral of this film is, don't be a cheetah.
You nailed it.
That's it,
folks. That's it, guys.
I'll be here all night. It was great to see Robin Wright as Antiope again. I think she does a really good job in that mentor role. There's been a lot of talk about an Amazon television series that will be produced by Patty Jenkins. I'm actually really hoping that becomes a thing and that the negative reaction to this film doesn't stall that project, because I would love to see that.
Yeah, I was never too excited about the Amazons project, but after seeing this film and recognizing that the Amazon scene on Themyscira was probably the best moment of the movie, I'm actually looking more forward to it because I've always found it interesting. And that holds true for the first film as well.
From Themyscira, we cut to Washington, D.C., circa 1984, where we learn that Maxwell Lord is a motivational speaker, TV personality who plugs his oil business. Wonder Woman foils a jewelry store robbery in a shopping mall, which secretly had the Dreamstone.
The shopping mall scene was bizarre in that it felt very much like Superman 2, where for each heroic action beat that occurred, you had a reaction from the general public at large, and it came across as very campy, very corny.
Yeah, it was a very different vibe and tone from the first Wonder Woman film. We get a glimpse of Diana's life. She's alone and still heartbroken over the loss of Steve Trevor. The next day, the clumsy Smithsonian scientist Dr. Barbara Ann Minerva runs into Diana at work, and they form a friendship, while Diana examines the Dreamstone and wishes for Steve's return. There was a moment when Diana was examining the stone that this other scientist comes by and says, "Oh, I wish for some coffee." And then, someone brings him a cup of coffee. It's like this throwaway bit, but as he's walking away and sips it, he's like, "Oh, that's hot." I think it was like a great like little snippet of the rules of the Dreamstone. I didn't catch it until the second time I saw it, but I was like, oh, that's perfect. Good foreshadowing.
That's pretty funny.
On the way back to work, Barbara is assaulted, but is saved by Diana. As Barbara examines the Dreamstone, she wishes to be more like her new friend. Barbara wakes up sexier, stronger, and more capable of walking in high heels. She meets Maxwell Lord, who says he's interested in funding Smithsonian research, but really he's after the Dreamstone. When Max returns to his office, we learn that his oil business is really just a Ponzi scheme, and that his main investor, Simon Stagg, wants out and plans on reporting Max to the FTC. Max assures his son that everything will be okay. Now, how cool was it that Simon Stagg was in this movie?
Who?
Fucking Simon Stagg! Didn't you listen to our Metamorpho versus Super Skrull episode?
Was he the businessman that was like an asshole to Metamorpho?
Yes. Yeah. That's him exactly.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Shame. You should know all of the DC obscure characters by this point. Max meets up with Barbara, who is smitten with him, at a Smithsonian gala event, and she takes him to her office, where he gets the Dreamstone. At that same gala event, Diana meets Steve Trevor in the body of another man. He takes her back to his place, and they spend the night together. Meanwhile, Max takes the Dreamstone back to his office and wishes to be the Dreamstone, which was a really interesting wish. I think he should have phrased that differently, because why didn't he turn into stone?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. He should have said something like, I wish for the power of the Dreamstone, or something.
Yes.
But I guess it was a way for him to eliminate the stone from existence so nobody could use it against him.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, I didn't think of that. Barbara wakes up and begins to display feats of super strength, such as lifting heavy weights at the gym. Max tricks Simon Stagg into wishing for their business to be a success and into giving up his shares. Diana and Steve decide that they should find out how he came back, and Diana shows him around the town on their way to learn more about the Dreamstone. Barbara reveals that Max now has the stone. Diana and Steve break into Max's office, only to find he's departed for Cairo. Diana deduces that the Dreamstone was a God-created artifact and is concerned Max won't be able to control it. Diana and Steve steal a plane from the Smithsonian and fly to Cairo, where Max tricks an oil baron into giving up his security force and causes international strife. Diana and Steve try to stop Max, but Diana gets injured in the process as her powers fade. As Barbara gets more powerful, she starts becoming more violent, nearly killing the man who previously assaulted her.
And I thought that was a pretty good scene. I actually thought that was Kristen Wiig's best acting.
Yeah, when she's like telling him like no, she just has this crazy look in her eye. It's pretty powerful. Barbara helps Diana track down the origins of the Dreamstone, as well as a man named Babajide, who helps them learn the god behind everything is the Duke of Deception. They figure that either Max has to die or everyone has to rescind their wish. Threatened that she might lose her newfound powers, Barbara rejects their plan and flees. Now, Ravi Patel plays Babajide.
And is this character from the comics or something?
No, he's not.
Okay.
Not that I know of, at least. As world tensions continue to rise due to the wishes Max is granting, his health steadily declines. For some reason, he decides to meet with the president, which Diana and Steve notice after arguing over whether Diana needs to rescind her wish for Steve to be alive. Diana also shows Steve a vision with her lasso of truth of the Amazon hero Asteria. Now, do you know why Max wanted to see the president?
I think he was just power hungry, and the president was like the closest, most powerful person that he could think of.
Okay, yeah, I'll buy it. At the White House, Max learns of a satellite capable of controlling every television and computer screen in the world. Realizing he could use the satellite's signal to quote-unquote touch everyone,
Weird.
Max departs with the full authority of the president, only to encounter Wonder Woman on his way out. Barbara appears to protect Max, and she defeats the weakened Diana.
I actually thought that this was a pretty good action scene. I like all the cool uses of Wonder Woman's lasso, although maybe it was used a little bit too much in this movie and a little bit too versatile, but it is a cool effect nonetheless.
I did like the way they used it in this film, but the swinging kind of got old after a while.
Yeah, who needs to swing when you can fly?
Right? She was still swinging after she learned how to fly. I don't get it. Society continues to unravel, and Diana and Steve realize that she needs to rescind her wish. She does, and now free of Steve, Diana learns to fly.
What was better, the scene where Diana learns how to fly, or the scene where Henry Cavill's Superman learns how to fly in Man of Steel?
Man of Steel. Gotta go with Man of Steel. Even though this one was really good, I love Hans Zimmer's score that went with... but the scores are both good. I can't choose. Stop making me choose between my children. Max makes it to the satellite antenna and broadcasts to the world, asking everyone to make a wish, allowing him to take from them whatever he wants in return. Somehow, everyone in the world understands English.
That's true. What the hell?
Wonder Woman somehow finds the satellite base, no idea how, while wearing her winged golden armor. After taking out all of the soldiers, Barbara emerges in a new cheetah form and dismantles Wonder Woman's wings. They swing around and fight, but eventually they fall into a pool and Diana electrocutes Barbara. No idea why Diana wasn't affected by the electricity. I mean, she was wearing metal.
Yeah, but she's a demigod, the daughter of Zeus, and we saw in the last movie that she was impervious to lightning. The context of Diana being immune to electricity is from the first film, which you would have had to have seen in order to get that. If that is indeed the case.
That's true.
What I want to know is why Wonder Woman was swinging around with her lasso when she had the ability to fly, so she could have just flown up into the air, kept Cheetah at a distance, and lassoed her from a distance. They didn't need to do like this weird swinging thing above the water.
Yeah. After defeating Cheetah, Wonder Woman makes her way into the broadcast room and destroys the camera, but it's too late. By the time we reached the climax of the film, the scope and the stakes ended up being pretty huge, though I have a hard time believing no one wished for peace on Earth.
Yeah, it's hard to know what would happen if people made contradictory wishes, though. I also have a hard time believing that everybody rescinded their wishes, because I don't think that everybody would have done that.
Yeah, it's not clear as to whether Cheetah did. Once Max rescinded his wish for the sake of his son, I have no idea what happened to Cheetah. That's how little she was integral to the plot. Did she actually rescind her wish to be an apex predator? Or did Max's rescinding of his own wish automatically cause everyone's wishes to be undone? And if that was the case, what was the point of Wonder Woman reaching out to everyone if she only needed to reach out to Max? So many unanswered questions.
Yeah, the fact that she was even able to reach out to everyone through this weird particle beam of light, whatever, how was Maxwell able to psychically reach out through that beam? How was she able to reach out to everybody through the lasso? It was just so fucking weird. It's like they think that fans will accept anything just because it's a superhero film that, it's make-believe, but none of it was grounded in logic. I felt insulted.
I don't think he was even psychically connecting to them. It was like physical touching through a particle signal. It was so dumb.
So
the science
dumb.
behind it was ridiculous.
It didn't make sense. They didn't even set up that beam of light earlier on. When he stepped into it, that was the first that we ever saw of it. So I was so confused as to what the hell was going on.
Yeah, it was the satellite signal, but they don't explain that, so.
And the magic wind around the beam of light, that was the biggest question mark for me in this whole movie. I have no idea what the fuck was going on right there.
Well, Max is in a drunken euphoria from the power, standing in the path of the satellite signal. The world descends into chaos under the threat of nuclear annihilation. Knocked to the ground, Wonder Woman sneakily manages to wrap her lasso around Max's ankle and shows him the truth of his actions and how they affect his son, Alistair. Now, it was during this scene that they actually used the Batman theme from BVS, called A Beautiful Lie.
Are they taking musical pieces from other franchises and using them within other movies in the DCEU?
Well, I mean, that piece was made by Hans Zimmer, and he's the one who scored this film, so he's really just borrowing from himself.
It's just lazy.
Maybe. It worked, though. I thought it worked really well, actually. All of the music in this film was really good. I loved it. It may not have been as good as, Man of Steel, but I loved the way he took, the old Wonder Woman theme and made it much more majestic and triumphant and hopeful. I thought it was really well done.
Yeah.
Max rescinds his wish and runs to find Alistair back in Washington, D.C. He finds him and confesses that he's not a good father. Flash forward to Christmas time, for some reason, and some dick kids hit Diana with a snowball, though Diana seems to be loving life. She meets the man Steve possessed, and they chat about how the world is beautiful. That's the end of the film. In the end credits scene, though, we learn that Asteria, played by Linda Carter, is still alive in man's world.
What did the Life is Beautiful theme have to do with anything else in the movie? How did that all tie together for you?
It was kind of a theme that carried over from the first film. At the end when she was fighting against Ares, she was saying, I believe in love, and that she didn't reject mankind the way Ares did because of the beauty of the world. I think it was reinforced in this film with Steve Trevor, where he saw how things had progressed and how awesome it was. she saw the world in a wondrous way in the same way that Steve Trevor did.
Yeah, I think that scene's purpose was to show that she was no longer pining for her old dead boyfriend and was now instead choosing to experience the world around her in a way that she hadn't been for the previous 60 years.
And also, like I mentioned earlier, people, especially nowadays, keep fighting over how we wish the world to be. And like Diana told Maxwell Lord when he was in that state of euphoria, sometimes it's best just to take a step back and appreciate the beauty that is there already. I thought that was a fantastic message. And I think that's really the ultimate message that people are carrying with them when they mention how relevant this film is for this current time. I think the themes paid off in this film. I think, there were so many great emotional layers to it that were really sold by the great performances of the cast. The film was just beautiful. The cinematography was gorgeous. Again, I really liked this film. I know it feels like we've been harping on it for this whole review, but again, I liked it.
Everything is good but the story.
Yeah, I agree. And hopefully Patty Jenkins and Jeff Johns don't decide to write the next film. I'm really hoping they find new writers for that and learn the lessons from the reactions this time around. But in regards to this film, well, it did have its problems, and while it may have had a different version of Wonder Woman that people may be used to from the first film, it was well made, and there's a lot to like about it. There's a lot to enjoy about it, I feel. So I give it 3 stars.
I think there was a lot to dislike about this movie, especially when I think a film's plot is the most important facet of a film. I like this movie at the bare minimum to give it a passing grade, which is 3 stars. It equates to 60%, which is a D. So I would agree with 3 stars. I absolutely wouldn't give it any higher.
Would you recommend it to people if they asked if they should watch it?
I would recommend that they see it eventually, but I wouldn't recommend that they paid for it. So if they're getting HBO Max, then absolutely check it out. But, if they don't have HBO Max or if they have to rent it in some regard, I would say wait until it's on Netflix or some streaming service besides HBO Max.
And I would say just get HBO Max regardless, because that platform is dope.
Yeah, not everybody wants to spend $15 a month, though,
I mean, they'll do it for Netflix.
Yeah, but they already have Netflix.
Not me. I got rid of it. Don't regret it yet.
Why are you such a commercial for HBO Max?
And if you buy now, you'll get... I don't know. But that does it for this review. Let us know what you thought of Wonder Woman 1984 by writing into us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com or by visiting us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. You can find links to all of our accounts by visiting our website, dynamicduel.com.
And as a reminder, guys, please don't forget that we're running a fundraiser right now for Pop Culture Classroom. So if you could please give us a rating on podchaser.com. For every rating, we will be donating $1 to the organization. Right now, we're at 29 ratings, and we'd like to get a whole lot more. So if you guys could help us out with that and help out a great cause, that would be fantastic.
In our next episode, we will be having our 5th annual Brothers Award episode, where we take a look back at the best and worst the year had to offer. Of course, this year was complete shit, so we're going to skip it. Instead, we're going to be taking a look even farther back at the last decade, between 2000 and 2009, to talk about what we liked and didn't like from that decade.
Yeah, similar to how we did the Golden Brothers Awards in our last awards episode, where we ranked the best of the 2010s decade, we're going to do that for the 2000s decade. And we'll carry all the media from this year, 2020, into next year's Brothers Awards. So the 2021 Brothers Awards will cover 2021 and 2020. Since, Marvel only had New Mutants come out.
Yeah, that was the best and worst of everything, literally.
Guys, stay tuned for after this episode. We are going to play a quick preview of the Retronomicon podcast, also known as the Retronomipod, who are fellow Colorado podcasts of ours and great guys. So check out the preview and check out the great show. But again, that does it for this episode. We want to give a big thanks to our executive producers, Ken Johnson, Jace Crump, John Starosky, John Speas, Isaiah Bethune, Zachary Hepburn, and John Bechinina for helping make this podcast possible. And we'll talk to you guys next week and next year.
Holy shit, that's right. Up, and away.
True believers.
In a world where darkness has fallen upon the land and a plague has spread far and wide, 2 men decide to change the world by becoming torchbearers of better times.
What are you doing?
I was hired to do a trailer.
I think that's next door.
I am terribly sorry. Let's
roll that back. Try that again.
Welcome, adventurers. Your next quest will be...
Okay. No. Move it along.
Okay, I was just trying to make this sound epic.
You know what? Check this out.
Welcome to the Retronomicon Podcast, also known as the Retronomipod.
We sit down each week and discuss past, present, and future of all things pop culture. From early books from the Victorian era to the next big thing and, well, anything.
We will share our opinions about things we like from across the spectrum of the nerd and geek culture, or just chat about stuff that we found weird or interesting.
Join us each week as we record these chapters into our Retronomicon. And once again, we welcome you to the Retronomipod.